Have you ever seen those artificial intelligent generated images where you type in a few keywords into a website, you wait a few minutes, and then it generates a bunch of images similar to what you type? One of the most popular ones is called the DALL-E Mini, and you might be familiar with it if you've been on Reddit in the last few months. Well, it turns out that there's actually one that's focused more on design, and it's called Midjourney. Now, the cool thing about Midjourney is instead of going through some website, you actually do this through Discord. So you join the Midjourney Discord group, and then you just go into this chat room. You type in a few words, hit enter, you wait a few minutes, and then boom, there are 4 images that were generated just for you. And I tried this and the experience was actually pretty crazy. You're supposed to type in like some words or a phrase or something. And what I decided to type in was something like apocalyptic organic architecture made of recycled plastic and some pigeons. And I just threw in the pigeon in there, well, because, you know, my channel, of course. And the result were these really cool images that would make for an awesome like album cover or maybe a painting on the wall or definitely some architectural design inspiration, but I wouldn't call this architecture. Now, this architect by the name of, and I'm sorry if I mess this up, but Manas Batias actually decided to take this a step further, and they used this same program to create their version of something they refer to as symbiotic architecture. And you can check out their Instagram page and they've posted more images of this. But basically what this architect was trying to do was envision a world where we didn't rely in our comfy air-conditioned boxes and instead lived kind of like bugs and insects do inside something that more closely resembles biomimicry. And of course, this was all generated by artificial intelligence. So the fact that we have this tech now, does this mean that architecture is dead? Well, let me explain. Now, we're talking about modern day architecture. We generally need 4 things to be able to make it. We need the actual design. We need some sort of information or the architectural set. Then we need to be able to communicate and coordinate this. And then finally, we need to build this. Those are the 4 things that you really need. And of course, you need a 5th thing, which is resources, but that's a given. Now, if you think about it, this specific AI here only really puts one of these 4 steps in danger, and that's the design. Because, you know, theoretically, a client can grab this piece of software, spend some time using and putting different keywords until they're able to generate a design that they really love. And then they give it to an architecture firm that finishes it for them and then builds it. So they don't really need a designer in that case. Now, taking it one step further, let's say that someone decides to build an app and put it in the App Store, and then the app, what it does is that it uses a similar algorithm to the one that Midjourney uses, where a client would download the app, input some words, ensure some key phrases, and answer some sort of questions about the typologies that they're interested in, or maybe where the design is to be located, for example. They wait a few seconds, and then voila, automatically, this program not only gives them the design, but also generates a 3D model that already has all the information in it, all the parameters. Now, if you think this is kind of crazy, then just look up these 2 programs. One is Grasshopper and one is Dynamo. These are professional programs that are being used today that allow you, using words basically, to generate architectural models. But anyway, since this app is a computer program, it's going to be able to compute this model and generate it in really fast and pretty cheap, I would imagine. Not only would it be faster and cheaper, it would also be able to calculate the construction time and an estimated budget, and it would do all this like super fast, faster than like any drafter, designer, or architect can do. I'm talking about possibly even minutes. And so then you think about that and you're like, well, why does a client want an architect then? If they, with a click of a button and a few questions answered, they could generate their own designs, their own architectural set, like why do they even need an architecture firm anymore? And that's where you start to threaten the job of the architect and of the drafter. Now, it's funny because you architects and enthusiasts out there are most likely cringing, ready to throw up, like hating everything that I'm saying, but real estate developers, they're like, this actually sounds amazing because I'm saving money and time, building more, building faster, making more money. It doesn't sound nice, but it is the truth. Now, going back to those 4 things that are needed, you're still gonna need someone to coordinate and communicate that and also build it. So this AI software, it doesn't do either of those, so those are pretty safe at the moment. So this doesn't mean that architects and designers and drafters are just gonna stop existing. No, they're just gonna have to evolve to pick up other skills to be able to do this new type of architecture. If you think about it, it's kind of like the same way how we used to do plans by hand, blueprints, for example, and that skill doesn't really exist anymore. We still learn about it in school, but there's like basically 0 firms out there that do this. I would say 99.9% of the architectural population rely on computer-aided plans or models. So that's a perfect example of how this job didn't die out, but it evolved into something else using the current technology. Now, the big question here is, will AI kill architecture? And the answer is no, it's not going to kill architecture. I mean, we have always needed and will always need buildings. Now, do I think that AI is going to help architecture evolve? And I think the answer is yes, definitely. Now, like I mentioned, to most architects and most enthusiasts, this sounds like the death of architecture. I mean, think about it. There's no human emotion going into the designs anymore. There's no sort of understanding that goes from client to architect. Nothing like that is involved anymore when you replace a person with an artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is looking for other solutions based on whatever parameters they've been set, for example, efficiency, right? And so in that case, yes, architecture is going to be killed by artificial intelligence. But in my opinion, I don't think that it's going to die. I think it's going to evolve. It's just some people don't like to hear it put that way. I mean, architecture is all about evolution. When we started architecture, it was all about shelter. It was all about survival. And then eventually it became about faith and religion and culture. And then it became about showing off how much knowledge we have in technology with different materials and different abilities to scale bigger and taller. And in more recent times, unfortunately, it's about how fast and how cheap you can build it. And then with the help of AI, it's going to go back to us showing how well we can use the technology and how smart we are for creating this technology that allows us to do all this crazy stuff. So should you quit architecture if you're currently working, or should you just give up on architecture school if you're just starting or thinking about joining? And no, I don't think you should. I mean, if for other reasons, yeah, sure, maybe, but because of the fear of AI taking over your job in the near future, I don't think that's necessary. You see, I think that this will happen. AI will eventually become part of the toolbox within architecture, but I don't think it's happening now. I think it's going to happen within a few generations. I mean, just this tool that we have now, Midjourney, it is really cool. It does serve as a lot of inspiration, but it's not enough to completely take over the industry. But the way that AI is working now, I definitely see it becoming a very important part of architecture that will probably change the way that we design and the way that we document building information to be able to build it. So no, I don't think you should just drop out or quit or anything. What I will say is that if you are starting out and you do have some electives that you have open, I suggest you look into programming as some of these electives, or if you're even working at a firm, learn to program on the side. I think that programming and architecture do go hand in hand. There are ways that you can use programming today in architecture. And so this in the future will actually allow us to fit in once architecture starts to evolve, instead of fearing it, not learning about it, and then not being able to participate in this new way of doing architecture anymore.